Hey folks, how you doing? Welcome to my guitar channel. Wow, what a whirlwind week it's been on YouTube. There you go. But hey, I thought today what I'd talk about is to get into some triad stuff. I love triads. I think they're fundamental to guitar and big part of kind of making modern music. And also, they're an old school approach as well. So let's dive into that today. So the first thing we're going to deal with is let's do these all in the key of C for now. It just makes it easier, right? So if we think of what our basic triads are, just to make sure you're up to date with all the stuff, but it's C, B, G. 3 notes, right? C major triad. First, third, and fifth of the scale. Simple, right? We can have an inversion of that where we go third, fifth, first. In other words, E, G, C. Right? And then we can also have, which is G, C, E. So all we've done is played, this case, the root inversion, first inversion, second inversion, right? You can do that on all sets of strings, right? Here would be your first one. I'm going to go over these quickly because this is like fundamental information, and if you need to slow down the video to go over it, then that's all good. But I'm not going to waste everybody's time by doing that right now. So if you don't know this fundamental stuff, do that first, right? But here will be your next one. Right, so those are just your major triads, and just like the simplest of voicings. Now what we're going to look at today is how to actually use them in music. So I think a lot of times people will learn things and they'll go, or maybe they'll go, stuff like that, which are just exercises, right? The more valuable thing to do is to start putting them into music. So let's take this something simple and let's develop it, right? So if we have this, right, that's just a C chord, right? The bog standard C chord, which I'm sure you all know. If we look at that and we just take this much of it, G, C, E. There's your triad, right? Let's take the most simple chord progression that pops up all the time, 1, 4, 5. If that's your C, we could go 4, 5, 1. But that's kind of dumb, right? Because all that jumping around. Let's for now go, that will be our C, and then we're going to go for our F, right? Instead of that one, we'll go the inversion closest. And then we could go G, but let's go down to G and back up to C. Very simple, right? Now, what do we do if we start with another inversion? Right? Well, does it make any sense to jump down to F here, does it? We go to the F there, which is just C, F, and A. We'll take the same principle, go down to the G and back up. See how they can become music pretty quick, right? If we take the next inversion, that would be a C, that would be a F, G, C. Of course, we should do these on the next set of strings. Now, as I mentioned, you can slow this all down and kind of check out what those are. The important thing is not necessarily that you just kind of follow what I do, but try figuring it out for yourself. If you know this is going to be your first C, figure out for yourself where the F is going to be, right? That makes no sense, and that makes no sense. Like, what's the one closest to it? Well, it's going to be that, isn't it? Right? You get the idea. So if we know that much, right? Another common chord progression could be C, D minor, and G. 1 and then 2, 5, or 2, 5, 1 in the other direction, right? So if we have this, our F was this, right? We could also play D minor very easily in the same kind of position, right? Right, it would be A, D, and F. Right, and then G. So you see what I've done there? By exploring that F, I can pretty easily find the D minor that relates. Another one you could do that's really common in music is 1-6-2-5, right? So C, the 1 of the key, A minor, 6 of the key, D minor, the 2 of the key, G, the 5 of the key. Like really common kind of chord progression, isn't it? So if we try and explore that in these simple triads again, we'll get C, A minor, D minor, same as before, and G. Okay, so I got a little bit ahead of myself there on a couple of things there, but you get the idea, right? And these can happen all across the neck in all kinds of positions, right? But it's worth exploring that because, again, that's a common chord progression that's going to pop up. And the thing is, if you learn it in C, you can probably figure it out in the other keys pretty easily. Generally, I think it's a good idea to do, say, the key of C and the key of F. Then you have a set that's going to start here, like built off that, and a set that's going to start off there. If you do those two keys, you've probably got a good starting point, right? So here's another one too, right? So those are the major keys. What if we decide we're going to do minor? All right, everything changes quite drastically. So let's look at C minor instead of C major. Well, this was our C major that we've been dealing with. G, C, and E. We would take the E and make it an E flat. Right? Kind of looks like that chord, which I'm sure you've all seen before. Right? So if we were to take our D minor, it would be, in this case, be a D minor 7 flat 5 to be a minor. Makes most sense, right? Coming from that. And then G7, G major, back to C minor. But we can expand on these, of course. I'll get to that in a minute. So, of course, another one that's pretty common is like the minor 1-6-2-5. So C minor, A minor 7 flat 5, D minor 7 flat 5, G7, right? Another one that's pretty common is C minor, E flat major, A flat major, G major, or G7. Right, that's our C minor. And we could jump up to E flat like that, but that doesn't make as much sense. It makes more sense to go. Right, that's a E flat. And then an A flat. To me, this is how piano players play chords. You don't see piano players playing a chord down here and then jump up here and then jump down to another one here and like move around. They'll play a chord and then they'll like adjust a few notes to find the nearest chord that makes sense. And I find with the guitar, a lot of guitar players jump around too much and it sort of sounds disjointed. Whereas now, as you can probably guess, we could, with these, could add extensions to stuff pretty easily. Like that G7 chord is, to play this G major in that instance is kind of boring, right? But if we know that G chord, the benefit of it is it's super easy to adjust to make it something else. Say we wanted it to be G7. We'll take the G note and move it down to the F. Now we have sort of, it's not really a triad, but it kind of is. It's built off this. Still 3 notes, makes sense. Get the idea, right? You can start expanding on these. Another one we can do too is on the G7 chord. Instead of having that G note, we can make it an A flat note. Make it G7 flat 9, right? And you might be saying, well, there's no 7th in that. It's just flat 9, A flat, B, and D. But the 7 is implied, right? If you check out Tom Bukovac's playing, you'll see that he's a guy that implies a lot of stuff. I'll hear him play major 7s with no 5th or no 3rd or things like that. And you sort of go, well, how does that work if it doesn't have key notes it needs? But it works, right? Because it's implied. That note's implied even though it's not played. Right? Now we get... Right? could be a G triad. So we could go all kinds of ways, right? Now the thing with this stuff is I'm using these as examples of chords, but hey, all of this stuff is soloing too, right? All I'm doing there is really just trying to find my triads. And so a couple of things will happen when you start doing that. You'll start to hear the chords in different kinds of ways. You'll start to hear those notes in relation to chords, and that's really the key thing, right? It's one thing to play chords, it's another thing to play chords, to play melody. And it's another thing to kind of hear notes against chords, right? Like that's kind of where it's at. That's really what you should be aiming for in your playing. Now we're doing them all in the key of C, as I've mentioned. Put them up to the key of F and everything changes, right? Because now, like this, for our C minor, might not make sense to start there. It might make more sense to start there. Or, so that might make more sense depending on the range of the other instruments. Like say you're playing with a piano player and they're playing kind of low, well, you might want to play up high for contrast, right? And therefore the key might change everything about it. So explore this stuff, right? It's a lot of what I do in my practice. Now, you're probably looking at this, and some of you are probably thinking, it's kind of basic stuff, Nick. What are you going on about? Well, what I would say is what you could do is I've just suggested this from a very simple kind of triad position, right? What about if you played spread triads as well, right? Like 1, 5, 3 for the minor. Can't really reach that very easily. Right, you get the idea. You can see where you can take these. You can take them as far and wide as you want. But I guarantee you, if you start kind of going down the triad route, all kinds of good things are going to happen in your playing. And there's so many applications for this stuff. Everything from soul music to jazz music to blues music, rock music, everything, right? You can apply it in so many different ways. But also too, even if you think about a seventh chord, it's really just a triad with another root note. Hey, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here, and yeah, stay cool. Cheers.